Welcome to Dog Day Afternoon. I'm Gilles Gallant with FTN Bets on a show powered by the FTN Network, and it is the betting show. We're going to be covering my Super Bowl picks. We're going to give some NFL tips, picks, leans, thoughts, predictions. And the main thing that I want to stress with me on the screen here is we do not take things too seriously around here. As a case in point, it's just me on the screen. And the reason why is my good friend Joe. Something just happened here just before the show started. He's okay, but he can't do the show today. So I'm going to go solo, a little Han Solo here today, and give you a little bit of some of the takes that I've been thinking about recently about the NFL, my NFL prop picks that I have. They're published as well at ftnbets.com. My touchdown picks as well. Going to give you a little bit of insight to be able to help you as we head into the big game. Now, apparently, for me, Mike McDaniel is going to be the Dolphins' savior. And even though he kind of looks like every manager I've ever met at a GameStop, I swear this is going to be the guy that I think is going to improve Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins offense, because the man ran a lot of Mike Shanahan's offense play calling here in the second half of the season. And one of the things that I think that is very encouraging about that is that type of playing system is a little bit of an offshoot of Steve Sarkisian's offense that he was running at Alabama when he was the offensive coordinator there, which is what Tua Tagovailoa ran. So I'm thinking this is going to be a little bit of a perfect marriage here with Mike McDaniel coming in as a new coach. It remains to be seen what they do on the defensive end, if they're able to keep like guys like Xavier Howard and kind of retool that going into the offseason. But the future is bright in Miami. I think a lot of people are maybe still a little upset with the idea of, at least Dolphins fans, about the Herbert Tagovailoa comparison, just being drafted before him and whatnot. Let's not come to conclusion on Tua's career yet, especially because, to be honest, I feel like in his time in the NFL, he's been given a little bit of a raw deal. All right, now next one. Apparently, the Bengals are going to inspire a lot of stupidity from bettors. And why I say that is on gambling Twitter and even social media, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, a lot of people are sharing what they think is going to be a good Super Bowl 57 bet. And they're showing these tickets like on teams like with the New York Jets and the Jacksonville Jaguars, teams with these new quarterbacks that are under the rookie contract and that they're going to do this ultimate turnaround. See, I don't buy that. I think Cincinnati is a case in its own. I don't think that you can compare Cincinnati's trek to the Super Bowl similar to what the Jets may have to go through, or a Jaguars team, or you name the bottom feeder team that could turn it around in 1 year. And you're seeing this a lot as an NFL trend lately, where teams are resetting the process with a new quarterback every 4 to 5 years. It's almost like the running back debate now, like where quarterbacks and running backs are interchangeable. In order to ensure that they don't have to pay the quarterback big money so they can spread the dollars around to other positions. So you're going to see a lot of that chatter in the offseason. I personally think don't waste your money betting on the team like the Jets or the Jaguars to go from worst to first. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I think the best examples that we could think of recent memory were obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, who had Patrick Mahomes under a rookie contract, and now he's the highest paid player in the entire league, and rightfully so when you go to 4 straight AFC championship games. And then, of course, the Seahawks, who did that under Russell Wilson's contract, were able to kind of go to 2 Super Bowls under that before he got his big contract extension. Now, if you think Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence are in that same category of quarterbacks, I think we have a little bit of a different opinion on that. So kudos to anybody who wants to maybe look at the Super Bowl 57 odds, maybe try to get ahead of the curve, maybe start looking towards the middle of the pack instead of the bottom of the list when you're going to be betting on Super Bowl futures for next year. And speaking of Super Bowl futures, I talked about this last week and was talking to some odds makers and sports books. They're already starting to see some early bets on the Arizona Cardinals. And I think apparently the Cardinals' liability for Super Bowl 57 is going to be ridiculous, because entering the playoffs this year, they were already the biggest liability because they were around the plus 300, plus 3,000, plus 4,000 range entering the season. Right now in the offseason for Super Bowl 57 odds, they're looking at around 25 to 1 plus 3,000, depending on the sports book. But the Super Bowl is being hosted in Arizona in 2023. And I think there's going to be a lot of dummies out there who are going to think, oh, okay, well, the home team, this trend of the Rams now hosting this year and Tampa Bay hosting the year before, thinking that they could capitalize on that. I don't buy that. I think Kyler Murray is a little shortchanged, emphasis on short, obviously. But I think the main thing about this team, and specifically Kyler, is I'm not really sure he can go through an entire season and make it unscathed, where he would be able to get, let's say, the number one seed in the NFC or a top, get to the NFC Championship, let alone. I just don't think his playing style is conducive to winning football when it matters. Now, could he change my mind, and could he change the fact that happening? Very well, but I just personally don't see that, and we'll see. But I think anybody who's betting on the Cardinals, specifically for Super Bowl 57, because of the fact that they're hosting next year, is a very poor use of money. If you believe in them because from a talent standpoint, just being in the NFC West, already a tough division, sure, if you want to make a case about that, I could see it. But if you're going to try to make a case for me about whether or not they're going to get there just because they're hosting next year, maybe take a look again. Now, speaking of Super Bowl 56, I've got some player props that I'm going to give out to you guys here. But my first bet I wanted to give out is actually a side and total, specifically the side. And I don't necessarily trust the Rams to cover this spread. I think it's going to get up to about -5, maybe -5.5 by kickoff. So right now, just looking at sportsbooks, my favorite bet is Rams -3 first half. So here's why. Right now, and that's actually it's juiced at some books. You can get it at +100 at even money if you wanted to take Rams -3 in the first half. So if you look at the two playoff games the Rams played, they led by double digits in two of them. They came out hot. Like basically, if you look against that Bucs team, against the Cardinals team, just came out firing and were up by double digits at halftime. Against the 49ers, who is one of their more weakness teams, I think we can take that result into consideration, but I'm not going to use that as a main reason why I wouldn't take Rams -3 first half. Bengals have also started games slow as well. If you look against both games against the Chiefs, even to a lesser extent against the Titans, they were very slow coming out of the gate in those games. And I think the home crowd atmosphere with the Rams, their ability to move the ball, the weakness that the Bengals pose just from a tight end standpoint and over the middle of the field, I think the Rams could come out hot in this game and be up by double digits at half. So that is kind of where I'm looking right now from a side. From a total standpoint, I'm not going to bet the total, but what I will say this is that if you feel like this 48.5 total is going to go over, then you should probably take a look at the Bengals money line. Because in my opinion, I think the only way that the Bengals can win this game is, in order to do it, is they have to win in a shootout. I don't think that they can play the defensive matchup. I just don't think that their defense is strong enough to be able to contain the Rams offense from scoring at least 24 points. That's kind of the key number here, and that's why it's at 48.5. So if you think the Bengals are going to keep it close, and for my money, I think the Rams are going to put up at least 24 points. If both teams manage to put up 24 points, then you're basically sitting there. You're going to probably get the over in that spot, because obviously another team has to score to win the game. So that's what I would consider, is maybe looking at the Bengals money line instead, over around +190, +200, instead of taking the over 48.5 for a total in Super Bowl 56. All right. So Rams -3 first half, over 48. But if anything, I would take the Rams money line for the full game if you are going to be considering the over. Now we're going to look at some player props. Obviously, a lot of people know me for touchdown props, but I've had a lot of success with betting over-under player props throughout the season. I was up over 18 units with my weekly article that I would post at ftnbets.com. Pretty good record. I mean, I was doing 3 bets a week. This time I'm doing 5. But I'm going to give you my 3 best bets from that article and go a little bit more in depth on why I'm taking them. So in this instance, though, it was supposed to be myself and Joe. And Joe is okay. He's just been texting me actually during the show. Everything is okay. Just a little bit of stuff going on at home. He's got to take care of that first. So let's focus now on some player props. My first player prop that I want to bet for Super Bowl 56 that I've locked in now is Matt Gay over 7.5 points scored. And I grabbed that at -110 at Bet365. And the reason why I'm taking Matt Gay to have 8 points or more is in 3 playoff games, he's scored 30 points for the Rams. He has at least 8 points in each of those playoff games. So for me, automatically, I'm like, okay, he has the track record where he's done it. Now, when you look at the actual game logs for all 3 playoff games, he did miss a field goal in each of the last 2 games against the 49ers and the Buccaneers, One was a 47-yarder. One was a 54-yarder. I'm going to give him a pass, though, because he did kick the game-winning field goal in both of those games. So I think I'm willing to overlook that based on just some of his recent track record. And when you look at the Rams as well, just as an offense as a whole, they've had 20 drives in opponent territory through those 3 playoff games. That's actually second in the playoffs behind the Bengals. And they were pretty good during the regular season. Or Gay was specifically. He was 32 of 34 from field goals, 48 of 49 for extra point attempts. For me, I'd be very shocked if this falls under, just based on the fact that I think that the Rams are going to get into Bengals territory. I think that's a given. It's just more or less, I don't think that you're going to see a lot of these teams, both Bengals and Rams, try to maybe get too cute on 4th down. If they're at the 35-yard line and it's 4th and 2, they're going to kick that field goal and take the points. This game is too important to try to really try to, get too cute with it and try to do stuff that's maybe outside of your comfort zone and try to catch a team by surprise, especially in the Super Bowl, where teams I feel like are almost kind of waiting to see this trick play, because I feel like teams – they save all of these trick plays, whether it be on punts and 4th down plays and whatever else. Like, they have them kind of in the can ready to use in any instance. And here we are in the last game of the year. And I think some coaches maybe get a little bit of FOMO and want to use them. I don't think that's going to happen when it comes to the field goal game. I think that could happen maybe in punting scenarios, but not from a field goal standpoint. So Matt Gay over 7.5 points scored at -110 is my first player prop that I'm taking for Super Bowl 56. All right. Now, the next pick is another Ram, and it is the running back, Cam Akers. I'm going to be taking his over 2.5 receptions at +140. I grabbed that at DraftKings. And Cam Akers is a little bit of a touch and go for me. He has shown bursts in limited time so far in the Rams backfield. 54 carries in 3 playoff games. He's nearly playing double the snaps of Sony Michel, who's only got 24 carries so far through 3 games. And part of that was in the NFC Championship game when Akers got a little banged up. Michel was starting to take over a little more carries in the second half. But those numbers are very encouraging to me, as what we've seen from a track record for Akers, because it's really hard to cash this bet if your player is on the sideline. I need him out on the field. Akers has been on the field through 3 playoff games. And also, the Bengals, they ranked 28th in completions to running backs during the season. And when you look at their actual playoff game logs since the 2 of the 3 starting running backs they faced in the playoffs, in Jerick McKinnon and Josh Jacobs, they each had 3 catches. The only one that didn't was Derrick Henry, who they just continuously ran into the line of scrimmage over and over and over again and proved into a losing effort. So I was getting over 2.5 receptions at +140 at DraftKings. I just know that it's plus money at every sports book right now. It could be +120. It could be up to +150 at some books that I've seen. But right now, for me, Cam Akers over 2.5 receptions is my favorite bet, a plus money bet of player props for Super Bowl 56. All right, now my third prop pick. We're going with a Bengals receiver. This is the guy that I'm actually going to be betting to score a touchdown in the game for a lot of these same reasons. And I'm going with T. Higgins over 68.5 receiving yards, available at FanDuel at -110. I know that he has kind of taken a little bit of a backseat to Jamar Chase and the hype train that's in Cincy between him and Burrow, but he's still a quality wide receiver who could pick up a ton of yardage. If you just look at the last 2 playoff games of Cincy, when they were trailing, specifically against Kansas City and then also against Tennessee, where in the second half they were starting to trail a little bit. T. Higgins had 199 receiving yards on 13 catches and 19 targets. What that shows to me is that this guy isn't just an afterthought, basically, from Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I'm not going to say that they're equal. I do think Chase is better, but it's a little bit more 1A, 1B than it is 1 and 2 when it comes to ranking these receivers. And then also, excuse me, if the Bengals do end up losing this game, I mean, I think I have the Rams winning this game. I just don't like them to cover the spread. But if the Rams win this game, I think Higgins could be in line for a huge day, because in the Bengals' last 4 losses, T. Higgins has averaged at least 106 yards per game in those outings. So for me, I'm thinking Jamar Chase, he's going to draw a lot of attention from that Rams secondary. I think the Rams are going to do everything in their power to try to neutralize that connection. And I think Burrow is still going to have to throw a lot, especially if they're trailing. So give me T. Higgins over 68.5 receiving yards at minus 110 from FanDuel. A couple other ones that I had as well. Actually, Joe, his picks for this game, I don't have the analysis for it, but I figured I'd share it with you as well. He actually thinks Jamar Chase is going to have a big game. He has Jamar Chase over 78.5 receiving yards. His next pick, he's going with both wide receivers as big gains for props. So Jamar Chase over 78.5 receiving yards is Joe's first pick. His second pick is Cooper Kupp for longest reception, and that's at 28.5. He loves the over on that one. So at minus 130, it's a little juiced, but still, I mean, you're watching the yards after catch for Cooper Kupp and just the fact that he's still getting like 35% of the target share. It's a little hefty of a number at 28.5. But if you're going to be taking a number like that, I would prefer that than trying to bank on somebody like, say, like Van Jefferson or even Chase for that matter for longest reception. Because even though those guys are great, we know what Cooper Kupp is now entering Super Bowl 56, and he is the main guy. He's going to get all the targets. I'd be shocked if he doesn't score at least once. And 2 touchdowns right now. There's a reason why he's the favorite to score 2 touchdowns at plus 200 at most sports books. Now, another prop that I did bet, I've been mentioning it on Twitter. I shared it from ftnbets.com as well. And again, this is the most juice prop I bet for the entire game. And I grabbed it at minus 130. It's up to minus 140 now. And that's Matthew Stafford to throw an interception. And some people pointed out to me, he only threw 1 interception in the playoffs, didn't throw one against the Bucs or the Cardinals. And I don't really care. I feel like those 2 secondaries got a little exposed. And not only that, they did turn the Rams over a couple of times in the second half. So even though Stafford, a couple of passes he threw against the Bucs ended up being dropped or just tipped and not being caught, there was still opportunities for the Buccaneers to get an interception in that game. And then when you look at the Bengals through 3 playoff games, they forced 6 interceptions, 3 against Tannehill, 2 against Mahomes, 1 against Carr on the game-losing play. It was the last play of the game, but it still counts. At minus 140, I would still bet that. I still feel like Matthew Stafford to throw a pick is free money in this spot, especially when you just consider the fact that he led the league in interceptions this season. Like, just because he had 2 easy playoff games of what I call them, like especially against that Cardinals team, and then the Buccaneers, he just happened to not throw an interception, doesn't mean that we should just completely dismiss the idea that he's not still has a little Detroit Lions in him and he still likes to be a little bit of a gunslinger. So I think we need to kind of consider that as we go. All right, so those are my prop picks. I'm going to recap them one more time. So I've got Matt Gay over 7.5 points. I've got Cam Akers over 2.5 receptions. And I've got T. Higgins over 68.5 receiving yards for Super Bowl 56. And Matthew Stafford to throw an interception at minus 130. All right, now we're going to move on to the touchdown score odds. And they have been moving throughout the week. We're still sitting at Cooper Kupp at minus 165 as the favorite. Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, both odds on favorites to score as well. For me, my favorite touchdown scorer pick is Odell Beckham at plus 140. I mean, he scored touchdowns in 6 of 11 games. He is resembling what I think is Giants Odell Beckham Jr., like the specific like first and second year Odell, not the first and second year of Cleveland Odell that we were watching the last 2 seasons. And I think right now he is my favorite to score, especially against the secondary that is going to focus so much on probably trying to stop Cooper Kupp. Odell Beckham at plus 140 is my favorite touchdown score bet for Super Bowl 56. Now, my next favorite touchdown score bet, I was able to get him at a little bit better of odds at plus 165, but I still like it at plus 155, and that's T. Higgins. And for a lot of the same reasons that I mentioned about why I like his receiving yards prop is just I think he's going to get a lot of work in this game because I think there's going to be a lot of focus on trying to stop Jamar Chase. Again, easier said than done, but I still think we're going to probably see a big yardage game from Joe Burrow, a lot of passing attempts. I think we're going to probably see close to 40 passing attempts for Burrow. In that instance, for me, I've always got to go with the overs on props like that, especially for a guy like T. Higgins, because it's just such an odds difference to take Jamar Chase at minus 110 and T. Higgins at plus 155. And now the one thing I would stress And the one thing that I would say just about my system and my advice for anybody who's been following the way that I bet touchdown scores, you know that I like to gravitate to guys that are over plus 200. Well, the Super Bowl is one of those games where I think you could make an exception because it's the final game of the season. A lot of the time when people are betting on touchdown scores, this is usually their first instance of doing it. Maybe they might dabble once or twice here or there. That's when you can get away with kind of taking a little bit more favorites because your margin for error doesn't exist the way that it would exist for me. For somebody who's betting 3 and 4 touchdown scores for primetime game, 5 to 7 touchdown picks for the afternoon slates on 1 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Eastern for Sundays. So when you bet touchdown scores the way that I do, taking guys at the plus 110, plus 120 range, it's just not suitable for what I need to do because it caps my ceiling. So say if I bet 5 guys or 6 guys and they're all plus 110, plus 120, I still got to go at least 3 and 3 just to even see a shred of profit. Whereas if I start betting the over plus 200 range and sometimes up to plus 300, plus 400, or times that I hit guys at like plus 1200, I only have to go 1 and 5, 1 and 4, 1 and 3, or whatever it is. I only probably have to hit 1, maybe 2, and I'm profitable and I made all my money back. And for me, that's been my best system to be able to get profit, still have fun while we're doing it, and not really kind of go out of my way to try to just tell people to bet on Ja'Marr Chase. Because the fact remains, I consider myself an expert on touchdown scores and the markets and just kind of what to expect and what to look for when you're betting them. But if you need me to tell you to bet Cooper Kupp at minus 160 to score a touchdown, do I really need to exist to do that? Like, he's going to be the first drafted wide receiver in fantasy leagues next year for the most part. Like, if you need an expert to tell you that Cooper Kupp is good, you're telling on yourself that you don't really know much about betting. So again, if you're going to bet Cooper Kupp and Joe Mixon or Ja'Marr Chase in these games, this is the game to do it. During the regular season and just in any given matchup, I wouldn't do that in that instance. Now, before we move on, I just want to let you know as well, I do have a third touchdown scorer pick. It's my white whale. I got to take Joe Burrow at plus 550 because right now, against this defense, the Rams defense, their running defense specifically, it's a little overrated. They've actually allowed 4 rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks this year. And it's been against teams that they were pretty much dominating in those games, and then they still end up rushing for a touchdown. The only one where there was actually a game that they lost was against Ryan Tannehill in week 9 or week 10 when they hosted the Titans, and even Adrian Peterson got in the act and scored. I remember I cashed on both of them, so that's why I remember them very vividly. But Joe Burrow at plus 550, if you're going to bet on either quarterback, I think Burrow is the guy to do it. And I think this is going to be one of those times where you got to take a couple swings as well, because with the Super Bowl, one of my suggestions as well is for anybody who's betting NFL regularly is don't leave any in the chamber. It's a big gap from now until even just the draft of the NFL, or even all the way till September when we could start betting on games that matter. Preseason, I don't really bet that much, maybe here or there, but it's a big gap. And you're not going to have another opportunity to bet on this kind of instance till September. So you should take advantage of it when you can. And but I would still cap it at like 3 touchdown scores at most, because realistically, NFL games average 4.2 touchdowns per game or something along those lines. So the idea that you're going to do that, you're walking in with the idea that you're going to lose at least a couple if you spread it around too much. All right, now we're going to move on to Super Bowl MVP odds. The MVP odds haven't really shifted much over the last week. It's been pretty much the same since we did the show last week, with Matthew Stafford favored to win Super Bowl MVP at plus 135. Joe Burrow sitting there right now at plus 225. Cooper Kupp is the first skill player that isn't a quarterback, obviously, to be listed there at plus 600. And then of other guys that I'm already kind of seeing, like Aaron Donald is probably the one that made the biggest jump, because last week when we did this, he was 25-1. He has since moved to 12-1 to win Super Bowl MVP. And other, notable guys like Von Miller, Joe Mixon, their odds have remained the same. Now, full disclosure, a couple weeks ago before the divisional round, when the Bengals were set to play the Titans, I actually wrote a Super Bowl MVP odds piece at FTNBets.com, and I recommended that you would take Joe Burrow at 18-1 and Deebo Samuel at 20-1. Obviously, the Debo call didn't work out in my favor. It came down to a last-second field goal. So I still feel a little vindicated on betting that, considering they were going into Green Bay and were heavily underdogged in that game. Joe Burrow, I still like at plus 225. Now, I would say I've changed my tune on betting Joe Burrow right now at plus 225 to win Super Bowl MVP because of where the money line odds are right now for the Bengals, which is around plus 190, plus 200, depending on the sports book. And the reason being is zero point 0.7 of a dollar or 70 cents, is it worth the risk? Because let's say the Bengals, let's say Evan McPherson just has like a random day where he puts up like 4 50-yard field goals, or Joe Mixon goes off and has 150 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And the likelihood of Burrow's chances of winning MVP just decrease if any other player ends up having a big game. But then you cover your losses on that if you just take the Bengals money line. Just take the Bengals money line in that instance. And if Burrow wins MVP, the only reason he's going to win MVP is if the Bengals win. So I think in this instance, especially with the Super Bowl, especially with so many people putting a lot of different bets out there, you probably want to limit, your liability in that instance. Now, the long shots I did mention for Super Bowl MVP odds at ftnbets.com was actually Von Miller, specifically at 50-1, just because of the Bengals just having so much problems reducing pressure. I just noticed my fingernails are painted. That's dad life for you when you got daughters. And that Von Miller has won Super Bowl MVP before. He has 7 sacks total over his last 7 games. The Bengals, they allowed the most quarterback pressures and sacks, second most sacks in the NFL during the regular season. We all know that he allowed 9 sacks to Burrow in the divisional round. And, there's like he's basically been beaten around pretty much the entire season. And you saw Von Miller, like right now he's minus 180 to get a sack, for example, entering this game. So when being an odds-on favorite like that to get a sack, you know that it's going to cause some mayhem, especially against this offensive line. So for me, getting that at plus 5,000, where maybe he gets 2 sacks and a strip sack, that's really all it might take to be able to be noticed from that standpoint. Now, the one thing I would say is anybody who's looking at betting on Evan McPherson, I like it. It's a DGen bet at plus 10,000. It's right in my wheelhouse. I'm just a little concerned just based on history, because I just think of all the Super Bowls that we've watched. I'm 37. I've watched a lot of Super Bowls in my day, and I've seen a lot of kickers have some good days and bad days in the Super Bowl. A couple of guys that I immediately think of, I think of Garrett Hartley in that New Orleans Super Bowl versus the Colts. He had 3 field goals, over 40 yards, and kicked the onside kick, that in the start of the second half. Anybody deserved an MVP candidacy for the Super Bowl, it was definitely him. Or if you even go back to the mid-2000s when Adam Vinatieri kicked the game-winning field goal against the Rams and against the Panthers. You could argue that he was just as important or more important than Tom Brady in both of those Super Bowls, and he wasn't even a finalist. So the fact that we're already kind of building in the narrative of Evan McPherson, and look what he's done through 3 playoff games, and the fact that he could just will the Bengals to victory on his foot, even then, I still think that voters, what they're going to end up doing is attributing the fact that Burrow got the team into field goal position more so than McPherson nailing the kick. It's just been the history of the Super Bowl. It's been the history of Super Bowl MVP. It always usually goes to quarterbacks, 31 of 55 times, whatever the number is, it's been gone to quarterbacks. Really, you could look at Julian Edelman from the Super Bowl against the Rams, where it was by default, just because if Brady had actually just been able to connect with anybody in the end zone, they were just dying to give it to him. They just couldn't do it. So McPherson at plus 10,000, I would probably pass on that. I think if you're going to bet on a Bengal and you're trying to look at some value, take a look at Joe Mixon. I know that Joe Mixon has not been getting as many carries, and Samaje Perine has been coming in and spelling him sometimes on 3rd down. And maybe I'm just thinking of the 90s and I'm living in the past. But think about how insane that it is that you can get a starting running back for a team that is not tethered to the quarterback based on performance at 35 to 1. Now, I know obviously this defense of the Rams, they've been pretty good against the run. As I mentioned earlier, I still think they're a little bit more overrated in stopping the run. I think they're just better at pass rushing than they are at necessarily stopping the run game. But for me, Joe Mixon at 35 to 1, when he scored in like 12 of 16 games, 13 of 17 games during the regular season. He only scored one in the playoffs. But again, he has the talent to do that at 35 to 1. I would rather sprinkle on that than Evan McPherson if I was betting on the Super Bowl and looking for guys that aren't Joe Burrow. So that's it. You pretty much heard every single bet that I've got locked in for Super Bowl 56. You heard my player props. You've heard my touchdown scores. You've heard my side and total. I want to wish Joe Osborne well. Again, I want to stress that he's okay. It's just something happened at home and he just wasn't able to make the show. He will be on the show again soon. I know he will. And hopefully everything is all good. And then we're going to be able to have him on the show probably next week, or if not next week, then the week after. So that's all for me. All my writing content is over at ftnbets.com. And you can catch me on Super Bowl Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern on Touchdown Town, where I'm going to give out my best touchdown score bets with Brendan Dawg from the National Football Post. Thank you for watching Dog Day Afternoon. I'm Gilles Gallant with FTN Bets. Bon chance.